It's the state of the dungeon. It's a video that Rob does about his games. Yeah! Hello everybody, I am Rob, and this is my State of the Dungeon address, but more than just a normal State of the Dungeon address where I cover all of the things that happened in the prior session. This being the night of the 5th of May, 2022, I kind of wanted to lay out all the things that are going on for our little group, because that's kind of the situation that we're in. It's not that they're in a dungeon delving into it. It's not like there's one big bad evil guy the group is going up against. No, this is a sandbox. This is where a lot of different things are going, and the players get to choose and pick the directions they're interested in. It just so happens that this group seems to like to complete the various tasks that they are offered, which is, you know, it's cool. It certainly is going to make some people very happy with them. It's also going to make some things a little complicated, certainly. So, first of all, I'll go over the party and where everybody kind of is. We have Zarya the Barbarian. She, as a barbarian, is kind of an outsider. Her ties are with the city guard, or actually the city watch. The guard is out there, the watch is inside the city. The guard guards the walls and such. So, she's familiar with the watch. They are sympathetic to her because she's done some service for them, but at the same time she's kind of riled them up a little bit because she ended up breaking a couple of recruits as she was leveling up. So they told her that she can't come back to them for training anymore because she's too rough, which she appreciates. But more to the point, Zarya doesn't have a lot of different ties that kind of bring her a lot of extra things into the party. So that's kind of an issue, that Zarya is a free agent. She can go wherever and do anything, and she doesn't have a lot of things tying her down. We have Aldrich. Aldrich is the elven noble who is a Harper agent. Shh. He has revealed this to the party. It's not a secret to the group. He is a wizard and has now taken the next step to become a blade singer wizard in the proud tradition of elven wizards. Obviously, not all elven wizards are blade dancers, but blade singers. But he is. So they like their blade singers. They think a lot of them because the blade singers go up in the front lines of the various opponents of the elves, and they can often be counted on to destroy agents that are enemies of the elven people. In this case, he brings that expertise to the group as well, and his sympathies to the Harpers. Now, with the Harpers, he has also revealed a contact in the Harpers to the rest of the group that is Mert. Mert is a merchant who has done quite well for himself and has a nice place in the castle ward. But also, it's kind of clear that he's in with the Harpers. So that does bring him as a contact and brings them work, which they have satisfied the very first things that they were asked to do, which is interrogate a horse. But this does mean the group does have the respect of the Harpers. There's nobody who has decried the Harpers or, offended them in any way. So right now the whole group has some reputation among the Harpers, which is kind of good. We have Jazor the Paladin. Now, he's a paladin of Selene. Selene is a goddess of the moon, and she's pretty well thought of by most of the people. Her agents go out into the darkness and bring the light of Selene and civilization to wild places, but also to places that are deep underground and in dark places and hidden from view. They're kind of nosy, is what I'm saying, and he's been acting very paladin-like, trying to do the right thing, generally trying to help and protect other people, using his healing powers among the group, but also to his influence and reputation has been pretty solid for the group and helping them get the benefit of the doubt whenever the group as a whole is encountered by somebody like law enforcement. He himself has the alliance of the obviously the paladins and priesthood of Selene, who are a fairly strong bloc. Although they're not the most political in the town, he's well thought of, and a lot of people are kind of vying for his attention, hoping that he'll go in a direction that they're passionate about. In kind of a sisterhood relationship, although a lot more tied down than the priesthood of Selene, is the priesthood of Tyr, which espouses the principles that the Order of the Gauntlet find useful. The Order of the Gauntlet is a faction that goes out and finds evil and smashes it, whatever it takes. They're pretty brutal, but they often work hand in glove, or gauntlet in glove, with the Harpers. The Harpers find out trouble, and the Order of the Gauntlet punches the trouble. So they've already been approached by the Order of the Gauntlet and given a trial test to see if they can stop fights that were being broken out by Zhentarim agents in the Field Ward, which is one of the last patrolled wards by the City Watch, and they did so. There was a little bit of a mix-up there, nothing too serious, but that does mean that the agent of the Gauntlet, or the Gauntlet, knows of them and thinks well of them. They have their hearts in the right place. They try. And they walked into a Zhentarim ambush trying to help the Order of the Gauntlets extend their ideals. They've made it quite clear that they are not completely in bed, though, with the Order of the Gauntlet. They did help, and it is appreciated, but they are now known as not exactly the most smooth agents, but people who can be counted on to fight evil. So more sympathetic rather than tight members, and certain members of the group also feel a little bit leery about this more militant branch. So let's just say they know of each other, but they're not, like this. In addition to that, the group has also come into the attention of the legal arm of the government of Waterdeep. Matter of fact, they had a brush-in with a magistrate over that same effort on behalf of the Order of the Gauntlet. Zarya, in specific, was brought to the attention of a magister. And they came to the tavern where they are, with an expected appointment that he was going to pronounce a sentence on her, which could possibly include jail time or a fine. The particular individual who met with her on that night, or that morning actually, was Magistrate Daun. Daun is a fearful specter of a man with very pale skin, almost gaunt and skeletal, in his magister's robes. He's quite the sight. He is also the magister who watches over deeds done in the North Ward, so he is their home judge. And he talked to the group in almost one of the most absolutely, if you're talking about dead neutral, no law, no good, just the laws, no good or evil in this, just as far as the law goes, is how he dealt with Zarya. Zarya does not deal with law very well. As a matter of fact, the conversation got pretty tight. She did not appreciate the fact that he did not appreciate her lack of lawfulness in punching as the solution for the problem that they had of taking care of the provocateurs who were trying to start fights and riots in the Field Ward. In the end, though, he did prove to be sympathetic to their cause. He only fined her 5 copper pieces, which is nothing. And told her if she ever broke the law, he would remember this deed and the warning she got in the next sentencing, which Zarya doesn't care about, really. So she's been warned, maybe, but we'll see how that goes. But it does prove that Daun actually is a person with a fairly good sense of civic responsibility. He understood their hearts were in the right place and they did the right thing. They didn't kill the guy, which they are clearly capable of doing. So, in the end, he decided they were the good guys, they didn't deserve a heavy fine, Zarya did not deserve a prison sentence, and he let them go with a little bit of role-playing. And it was nicely solved out by role-playing rather than dice rolling, which was cool. And the way I generally prefer to handle things like that. That also was a chunk of the night. So continuing on with our tour over the group, we also have Loxor. Now, Loxor himself, an interesting fellow. He's a tabaxi. He is a warlock, which is not a good secret because his powers betray his abilities. His Aldrich blasts are a black of hellfire. Despite the fact that he now has a magical blade, he's a hexblade warlock. So he's got a very kind of a dark and sinister rapier, but it's definitely effective. It is a really nice weapon, and he's quite good with it. But at the same time, Loxor has difficulties with personal boundaries, especially personal property. And at his heart, he's almost as much rogue as he is warlock, quite honestly. But he has special abilities that do both get him into trouble and get the group out of trouble a bit, so he can be a valuable member of the group. He's also open-minded enough that some other people look at him as a possible way of getting the group to do things that they want to see done. And sometimes those things dovetail. So right now he has a secret hookup who gave him a mission to solve a murder mystery. Solve out who is murdering elves and half-elves out on the docks. So the group spent a good chunk of time trying to figure out who's doing this, because Loxor insists they're going to get paid for doing this, which, yeah, that's the promise, that he's going to get paid if they can figure out who's doing the murders and stop the murders, which is something that most of them should want to do as generally good people. And at first, they hired a private investigator to find out the identity, which proved that the murders were caused by a Gond gun, and also that the person who did it was probably an elf themselves or a dark elf. One or the other. Almost certainly. He even produced a boot made from the boot print. So that's what he had to go with. And they did a lot of legwork to try to solve this mystery on this last session. They went to the Temple of Gond. They talked to under-priests to try to find the suppliers, the people who sell these guns. They found out that the most likely source was a number of guns that went missing, claimed by a merchant or dilettante entertainer named Zardos Zard. And he was a person of interest because he claimed that he had a load of special custom Gond rifles and Gond pistols that went missing. And these being out in the open, this is exactly the kind of thing the group would be suspecting might be the murder weapon. So they went and they talked to Zardos Zard on the docks. Some mistakes were made along the way, but generally the group manages to get through. And Zardos is an entertainer, a very gregarious fellow who was very pleased the group was looking into this because he didn't want to see his guns as a murder weapon. He only wanted them for entertainment, practice shooting, things like that. Possibly as a source of entertainment on his boat, the Sea Maiden's Delight, I believe. And as a means to, again, demonstrate, to have possessions, to look cool. And he didn't, according to himself, again, he didn't really want these weapons to be out in the open to harm anybody, but the cash that they stole was enough powder for multiple shots, ammunition, and several pistols and several rifles. So, this is kind of dangerous. These weapons can be very, very efficient. But especially in the hands of somebody who knows how to use one with the dexterity of an elf or drow, that's not good. Also, there have been a number of drow in the area, and they have had it bandied about that possibly the drow who have these guns the most in any force is a group called the Dragon Duertha. Anyhow, they're a group of kind of militant mercenary dark elves. And there's a couple of names that float around that are not the kind of things that second-level adventurers dream about going up against. Certainly. And in this particular case, they're really, really hoping that this murderer has nothing to do with them. So, that's a thing. Also, in addition to that, they struck up a kind of a friendship with some of the people from Gond. They were respectful. They, gave them money. They talked. Again, it was a lot of good role-playing this session, which I really, really appreciated. I enjoyed the opportunity to role-play with my players, and it gave them some actual fair amount of useful things, even if there really wasn't any combat involved with the circumstance. They did a lot of the work needed to kind of peel the onion layer by layer and try to get down to the identity and how to find the person. They did just about everything short of staking out the docks to try to find the murderer, maybe even positing some sort of a bait target for this murderer to go after. That's about the only thing they haven't done. They've done all the other legwork that they pretty much could, maybe divination magics and stuff, but yeah, as of right now, they are deep into this investigation. They're doing a really good job. I'm very impressed. Continuing on in our progress around the table, the last person in the regular group is Felix. And Felix is he's a ranger, and he's also a tabaxi. The very nature of the outsiderness of his character and the fact that the Rangers are kind of a singular group, respected by the people inside but left to their own devices, means that most of his contacts are with the Rangers of Greyhawk, which isn't bad. It means that he'll get first dibs on stuff that's going on outside the city walls, but isn't helping them a lot with some of the things inside. On the other hand, he has been quick to pounce, joke, on some of the things that have been going on in the town. For instance, he's used his connections to try to find out about something else they brushed up against, another hook, wherein the White Hart restaurant have not been getting meat orders from their usual hunters, and they're worried about them. Well, he found out that there's a hill giant in the area that were their hunting grounds. And this one is very aggressive towards two legs, towards sentience. So they may have ended up in a bad end. So they've got that hanging over their heads that they might be able to go and at least get rid of this hill giant in retribution for the loss of the hunters, if in truth the hunters are themselves dead. It's obviously, hill giants are kind of scary, especially when you're just second level. So that's something for the future potentially. But right now, he doesn't have a lot of other connections that are coming inward. That doesn't mean the group doesn't have those connections over their head, though, because in addition to the factions they've already gotten those contacts with, there's one other person who has led to another person getting in touch with them. You see, the Blackstaff, Vajra, has noticed the group because of her contacts with the City Watch. Their names have been floated as an up-and-coming group who now own property in the city and can be counted on to stay within the city, at least for the time being. So she'd rather see them employed gainfully, and she is responsible for a group of law providers called Force Grey. And she invited them to have a hand in Force Grey by giving them a relatively simple mission to go out and talk to a hermit and find out what he knows, because supposedly he's got some tips about bad stuff going on through town, possibly to do with the Zentarum faction. And they went up to talk to him, and things kind of broke down a little bit. He's very insulting in his approach. So when they got to him and talked to him, he insulted everybody to the point that Loxor couldn't take it anymore. But they eventually did, with cooler heads prevailing, talk him down and get his testimony, which is in the form of kind of a riddling phrase. They didn't appreciate it because apparently this wasn't meant for their ears, but when they got back to Vajra's Blackstaff Tower, they relayed the message to her, and they were very grateful. And now Force Grey acknowledges that they have helped them. Didn't give them much of a reward. Ding, they got a point for Force Grey, which they wanted money. Let's face it, they need cash, but they did so. The other thing that they've done, the other contact that they had, that they, again, connected from Lady Vajra, is Larell Silverhand, who is the Open Lord of Greyhawk. And the reason she wants their help is because she is in a faction known as the Lord's Alliance. And the Lord's Alliance, really, they are, if you listen to their propaganda, they are the faction for everybody. They want lore and knowledge to be used to help everybody, and they want to coordinate all of civilization to protect civilization and expand it. So by doing this, they gather adventurers and they send them off to do things for enemies of the states. They're led by the nobility in general, and powerful retired adventurers and the like who've helped out and demonstrated their loyalty and promoted civilization throughout. And they are another faction which provide for potential adventures and opportunities to deal with the nobles. And working on their side, they can find themselves with some very, very handy assistance, especially since they are landholders. And their first mission is to guard some dung sweepers, because there's rumors that the fighting between the Xanathar's Guild and the Zhentarim could spill over to the good folk of Waterdeep and threaten people who are most vulnerable, which are these dung sweepers who keep the city clean, suddenly finding themselves having to deal with assault while they're just trying to defend the city from grime and poop with their brooms and such. So far they've gone through several days, several shifts of watching these dung sweepers, and nothing exceptional has happened. There's a couple of troublemaking bravos in the area, but for the most part, it's been a very easy job. So if this is all they have going for them, then they're fine. It just costs them a couple hours a day, which they amply have. So that's the different threads that are tugging them in different directions. Again, they haven't really met up to much, but they are putting them in good stead, demonstrating they're good citizens and good folk. So all of these things working together have given them lots to do, various things. It may not be the most thrilling of combats or anything of that nature yet, but it does put them in a position where when these dangerous things come through, they're going to be the people that are going to be called for by doing these initial, what seem to be make busy jobs, which actually are the things that will say, hey, we value you as an asset. Now that something that needs to get kicked or punched comes up, we can call on you reliably. And if they demonstrate themselves now in little things, it's an opportunity to grow, more so than feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders because you have a predestiny or there's some big bad evil guy spelling the end of the world. No. This is how far more adventurers have their experiences of, paying their dues, really, if it comes down to it. They actually have to worry about making enough money to pay rent and pay for all the bills that their place is going to rack up, to pay for guild dues and the cost of living and things like that. Is it thrilling? I think it's good for character building, and hopefully, the group agrees. I've seen some really better role-playing out of this game than I have for several. And I appreciate every step that the characters take in growing as characters and coming forward as, interesting people in the world rather than these predestined heroes that everybody else just has to deal with. So by owning the Troll Skull Manor, whatever they're going to call it in the end, and, making this a place to be proud of, to shape, to fit their needs, cool, but also to forge their place within Waterdeep and become vital people that other people are going to know and want to know and care about. One other thing, a quick roster review, too, of the adopted children of the group, it may be said. There is young Pip, who was basically holed up in Troll Skull Manor when nobody was owning it, really, who is actually, seems to be a preferred companion to the ghost that lives within Troll Skull. And the group has appeased by doing all this work to try to turn it into a tavern once more, which he seems to care about. So Pip is a young urchin. He is 8. But he already has demonstrated that he is very quick and he is very smart. To the point that, and he's also kind of cute. He's got this kind of a British accent and all that. And he definitely holds the group in awe. You've got people who can throw fire at the flick of their wrist, and eldritch blasts and kabooms, and you've got, a dragonborn paladin. That's incredibly cool. And Zarya is tough, and as a woman, she beats up, 4 times her weight in men every day. I mean, there's a lot about this group that is really cool and really excites the kid. And so he is an eager disciple of whoever is trying to help him the most. Right now, that's kind of Loxor. Loxor let him go on a buying spree and buy out an entire bakery shop, and he has stuffed himself. And he really, really likes Aldrich because he thinks that wizardry is cool, and Aldrich has determined that he is going to educate the boy and try to make something of him. And he really loves Zarya because she got him clothes. That means a lot to an urchin who's wearing rags. So, Felix is a little standoffish, and Jazor is kind of overwhelming as a personality, but at the same time, he feels comfortable around Jazor. His bedroom is right across the hall from Jazor's. That's not by accident. He kind of likes having the big guy around. So he's become kind of the heartwarming member of the group in his own way. He's also demonstrated that he is capable of slipping out and slipping into the house without anybody really noticing. He's just got that uncanny urchin mannerism to him, that he comes and goes as he needs, and he survives the streets. He's pretty good, all things considered. They also have adopted Maximilian Maximilius, who is a halfling sorcerer. He first introduced himself when they first supped at the White Hart restaurant, bought them all their food for that night, and he just demonstrated that he was interested in meeting adventurers, and could they recommend a place for him to stay? Well, that got him adopted. Since then, he has become kind of their steward. He makes sure that people aren't robbing the house. He keeps a track on the people who come in and leave, and he stays there, generally, when strangers are coming in and out of the house to fix it, which the group has already accounted for. And they seem to think it's pretty useful to have him around. So, you know, he's a fairly harmless little guy, and they seem to like him well enough. He's not a major force or presence in the group as it stands, but as it is, he's handy to have around. So I believe he has a small bunk in Zarya's suite of rooms. And then, of course, they have Khalees. Khalees is a copper dragon-born artificer that they rescued from being attacked by some street scum that were trying to hold him up. He looked like a tinker who might have had some valuables on him, so he was being held up by a number of people. The group came in and quickly turned the tables, routing and taking down the assailants with their own flavor, we'll just say. At this point, Khalees is grateful for them for saving him. And also, he is living in their basement. They gave him over the wine cellar of the tavern to make his own little workshop. It's really cramped. It's not his ideal place, but it's enough room for him to start working on his stuff. And in the ale cellar, he is building his masterpiece, which right now looks like about a 7-foot tall orangutan skeleton that he is attaching bits and pieces to. He is going Battlesmith, and that will eventually be his Steel Defender. So he's going with a giant orangutan with the ability. So it's pretty cool. He's also known for his mechanical winged monkey. That is his homunculus. That does his, running for him. So it gets a sandwich when Jazor is doing the cooking. By the way, Jazor is a very good cook. So that will be one of his roles within the tavern when they're not adventuring. And he will definitely up the prestige because he's quite good at it. But Khalees is one of those folks they've turned into an asset. They're like, well, can you make basic magical items for us that are, quality of life improvers? And he can. The rules are actually quite simple for artificers to become your one-stop shop for all of the handy little things. And at his level, he can make common stuff without much difficulty. Cheaper than they would have to buy it for, and he can basically pass off the savings they get to his cost and rent. Ultimately, he will not stay there. He will want to branch out into larger accommodations for all the various things he's going to want to do, but as of right now, could be a very useful ally to the group. And, we'll see how that works. Also, it's convenient to have an extra NPC around in case people can't make it, and I don't want the group to go out underpowered. Just saying. So he is kind of a GM NPC, but he's not one that takes a major role in the group. It's just every once in a while his monkey shows up to show he's still around, and if the group needs him as an asset, they can always chat with him. But he also does have some knowledge that can be useful, especially around, Gondworks and stuff. So that is the update. That is the state of the dungeon as it stands right now. Hopefully this is useful to you and reminds everybody of the various things going on in the fantastic world of Waterdeep in the land of Faerun. So until next time, thank you for joining me. I will see you at the next session. Until then, thank you and farewell.